Thanks for staying with us. Reverend Thompson, let's begin with what you just saw and heard. How significant do you see the arrest of Nnamdi Kanu in our fight against all forms of insecurity in the country?
I think it's an integral part of the whole. Because you see, when I said that we need to ideate the country, the gap and the vacuum that the opportunistic streak in Nnamdi Kanu was able to capitalize on was because Nigeria today is yet to realize that if we're going to be a part of the global community and to cooperate properly, we're going to move away from the leadership of men to leadership by ideas. You see, once Nigeria refuses to supply the idea, that's why I said we need to ideate. We need to provide ourselves a national narrative that gives value to the life of every citizen in such a way that everybody is bonded together. As long as that vacuum continues, first of all, the security situation will never be resolved. We need to supply a value system. We need to supply also an architecture of thought. We need to think 30 steps ahead of the threats against the country. Now, to Nnamdi Kanu, we have to proceed with caution. It's a good thing that he has been arrested by the federal government, but moving forward, I mean, we need to commend the security services for having done that. But however, moving forward, if you heard the tonality of caution with which most commentators have spoken, we would want the federal government to realize that putting Nnamdi Kanu on trial is a part of the whole picture. First of all, I would like to tell you something, that there's a difference between the concept of Biafra, the dream of Biafra, the event of Biafra, the war of Biafra, the trauma of Biafra, and then the opportunists like Nnamdi Kanu who have taken advantage of the fact that all these other things we mentioned have never been given closure. And because they have not been given closure, the average Igbo youth, just like the average Nigerian youth in any other part of this country, wakes up in the morning and does not see a future. He does not see a future because it is the duty of the government to provide him a vision. Now, in the absence of a vision, you will find out that people instinctively, when they become traumatized, they see terror, left, right, and center, they don't see a future. Instinctively, people begin to look for the future in the past. And that's why you will find out that the clamor for Biafra, the clamor for Oduduwa Republic, and all those irredentist calls and, separatist calls were getting stronger and louder and finding place in the hearts of men. Now, in proceeding forward, we need to be very careful, because when the government puts Nnamdi Kanu on trial, you want to make sure that it is his opportunism that is put on trial. Now, if he is wily and crafty, he's going to want to mix all the issues together. If the federal government ever makes a mistake, a strategic mistake, of allowing the concept of Biafra, the event of Biafra, the Biafran war, the trauma of Biafra, and all these other issues that have not received closure, if we ever make the mistake of allowing all those things to come to this trial, the outcome will not help the country. But I believe that there's more than enough wisdom in the leadership of this country. I must say something that I want all of us to realize right now. We need to rise above petty politics of the day, to realize that the challenges facing Nigeria today are twofold. One, we have the threat, the global threat of terrorism that has its local face. Now, it has come to meet ancient problems that we are never, ever resolved. We're talking about the cleavages, divisions, talking about corruption, talking about religious intolerance, and other things that had always been on ground, but were never addressed convincingly. So the complication now is this opportunistic attempt by Nnamdi Kanu to hijack the hearts of the young people, and he had some degree of success. Nobody listening to his rhetoric, nobody who has listened to his approach would say that this is kind of the future you want for any Igbo man or anybody at all. But the point is, like you mentioned earlier, there's no vacuum. Nature abhors vacuum. There's no vacuum in life. So except we supply an overarching vision for the nation that bonds all of us together, that gives value to the lives of our citizens and gives us an assurance of a tomorrow, you will find out that opportunists like this will always continue to do well. So we have to be very careful. There are many young people who, in the absence of that vision, the ideating that I spoke about, in the absence of that, they have latched on to his demagoguery and his opportunism. Now, we're going to have to, as his elders in the country, will always continue to advise the government. Go about this very clinically. Separate the issues. Show clearly that this is an opportunist who was about to lead a whole section of the country in a totally negative direction. And I don't think that is something that's too difficult to do.
Well, is that, in your opinion, why the other three main ethnic groups in the country, the Ohanese, the Afenifere, the ACF, also caution the government to be careful?
Precisely. They are saying that because there's been a groundswell of calls for separatism. And I've said to you that the only reason that is happening is because we have refused to supply the nation with a single vision that is profitable to all. Let me tell you this. In the design of nations, there are two basic things that leadership must always take note of. It is the anticipation of pleasure and the fear or dread of pain. In creating any nation, you must toggle these things. Now, this is the point. If the average person looks and the future is bleak, and what is prevalent, the news coming to him on a daily basis, is the anticipation of pain, rather than looking forward to the pleasure of fulfillment, of prosperity, of progress, and things like that. Now, don't forget that the anticipation of pleasure is more powerful than pleasure. And let's not forget again that the dread of pain is even more powerful than the pain itself. So these are the tools. The terrorists have been using the dread of pain to try and shape the destiny of Nigeria. Now, it is up to Nigerian leadership, like I said, to realize that it's not just a game of numbers or, oh, I have this number of men behind me anymore. What leads in the world today is the leaders of ideas. So there must be a fresh vision that assures the constituencies controlled by Ohanese, controlled by Afenifere, and all other groups like that. There has to be something supplied from the center. And mark me, because I've told you that this is one of the things that is still missing, that we're expecting to be put firmly and established firmly in the days ahead. But if it is not done, then we will understand that the affairs are truly justified.
In talking about vision and a national vision, a number of people have spoken in that vein as well. I remember Professor, I've forgotten his name right now, also mentioned the need for us to have a national ethos. However, in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Section 15 is clear. The motto of the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall be unity and faith, peace and progress. Sub 2 of that section says, national integration shall be actively encouraged, while discrimination against while discrimination on the grounds of place of origin, sex, religion, status, ethnicity, or linguistic association or ties shall be prohibited. Is it a problem of coinage or a problem of ideating, just as you said earlier?
I think it's a problem of having a reality check. You see, first of all, the Nigerian Constitution contains a lot of words. And those words, frankly speaking, may not be worth what we think it is until those words have been injected into the hearts of men, our citizens. Now, don't forget that we are coming from a background of trauma. We are coming from a background of slavery, and then we morphed into colonialism. And the earlier statesmen who helped us to get our liberation in this country, they were very clear in helping us to realize that the edifice that we call Nigeria initially was totally a British idea. And they admitted, if you listen to one of the comments of our statesmen in 1968, they all admitted that at independence it was handed over to us. However, the comment went on to say that what was handed over to us at independence had within it the forces of its own disintegration, forces to disintegrate the nation. And three things were prescribed by these statesmen. They said we had to tackle those forces of disintegration efficiently and quickly. Then they asked us to define the Nigerian inheritance and preserve it before talking about making sure that life is peaceful, prosperous, and forward-looking for every single Nigerian individual. You see, the way we have been going about this is as if to say that a statesman like Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa did not know what he was saying on the 7th of October in 1960. The speech he gave at the United Nations till tomorrow, I think, is his most inspiring speech. In the closing paragraph, he acknowledged what he called intractable problems. He said this publicly. And then he mentioned the fact that there's something called eternal truths, that when Nigeria will be ready to halt all the infighting, the breakages, the cleavages, the faults, and all the things that we inherited, that we would be able to fall back on eternal truths. Now, don't forget the Willings Commission, 1958 report.
Moment,
all
Reverend.
the things you see playing out, divisions in Nigeria.
Just one moment, Reverend. I don't want to lose track of that critical thing that you mentioned, that at the independence were things that could divide the country, even from as far back as then. What are those things, if you can identify them?
Well, quickly, they were just simply fruit. Just go and read Lugard's. Actually, it was designed by Tubman Goldie before the British government took over the territories of the Royal Niger Company. And then they brought in Lugard, the Megard, Lord Lugard, to come and supervise, the amalgamation of Nigeria and the putting together of Nigeria. Now, if you go and read his dual mandate, you'll find out there that there's a policy called divide and rule. That divide and rule policy is to create something that will keep failing without falling, as long as the colonial puppet master is somewhere in the background pulling the strings. Now, it is not just a Nigerian thing. Practically, most of the nations of Africa were all designed like that. It's just that it has taken us quite some time to understand those forces of divide and rule and how they work, so that when we understand those things, they're called algorithms. I can tell you some of the things that we need to do for us to get rid of, the effects of the divide and rule. But the point is that through the years, unfortunately, what this government has inherited is the fact that through the years, no leadership has ever convincingly been able to span the divide and rule. And more so because corruption was increasing. The monster of corruption was also growing side by side naturally. Now, the engineers of the Nigerian system knew all this. They could look 100 years ahead and tell you that, look, this is what's going to happen by so and so, based on what we have designed into your system. So the divide and rule is the key word here that we have to neutralize.
The question then is how?
Let me put it like this. A lot of the solution to Nigeria's challenges today, talking about the ancient solutions now, not the external aggression of terrorism. A lot of the solutions, what we are looking for is in the archives of the colonial office in our former metropole nation in the UK. Now, some of them have been declassified. I sent a team to the UK some years ago. And when they brought me the documents and I looked through it, I couldn't but admire the brilliance of men like Lord Chandos, Lewis Harcourt, and all the people who sort of helped to put, the colonial contraption together. You couldn't but help to admire the fact that these people think deeply, even in creating a problem. Now, the advantage we have is that these are days of artificial intelligence, deep learning. These are days when you put all this data into a computer, it can go over spans of 600 years and all that, and help you to locate what we can call the solution algorithms. Now, let us look at Nigeria. The divide and rule was applied in Nigeria in two tranches. Very clever. First of all, there was a northern divide from the southern divide. Now, the animosity was engineered in such a way, now for you to know how deliberate this was, go and listen to an interview that was granted by Ernest Ikoli, who of course died in 1960. Ernest Ikoli, one of our earliest statesmen. Ernest Ikoli said, when the colonial officers from Britain were coming into Nigeria, the colonial officers going to northern Nigeria and the colonial officers coming to southern Nigeria were always at loggerheads. They were even conditioned and programmed to fight each other on Elder Dempster, on the ship on the way to Nigeria. They considered themselves enemies. Now, if the colonial administrators considered themselves enemies, how much more the cleave between the north and the south? Now, don't forget that these people were so clever that it took only 399, practically, colonials to rule over 7 million people in northern Nigeria in those days. That was in early 1900s. So trust me, we're not dealing with something that you can solve without thinking. So I will just tell you that what we call solution algorithms are available. Nigeria likes fire brigade. This fire brigade thing is never going to work. So, but for now, we're short of time, so I will mention one of them. Nigeria has been crafted in such a way that if you look at our predictable history, we can't even discuss the traumatic events of our past are so emotional. And this, of course, affects the issue of Biafra now. Now, let me say this to you. One of the first things Nigeria had better do, which we're looking to leadership to do, and honestly, non-state actors, we have begun to make our moves because we are looking ahead as well. All of us are concerned in the future of our children and our grandchildren. The first thing we need to put into place is called non-violent communication. There's a platform of communication that is not strange to Africa. It's called non-violent communication. It has been well developed in many parts of the world. And I'm going to tell you something. Except we establish the platform of non-violent communication, the animosities, the effects of the divide and rule, the gaps between us will never be spanned. But if we apply non-violent communication and insist that it must be the national platform for all discourse, you will find out that what it does for us is that it separates substance from smoke. So, having done that, we are able to locate the real issues. Then we can put the Biafran war, we can give it proper closure. The events of Biafra can receive closure. Listen to me, the concept of Biafra will never die because thoughts that have been well articulated will never die. But what wisdom does to things like that is that you deconstruct it. You granulate them. Sometimes you remove the venom from them by separating issues and making it simple for the average citizen to consume. So this non-violent communication between North and South is important. Also, even between Southern nations. Now, let me say to you, everybody's calling for Odua Republic, everybody's calling for Biafran this and that and that and that, not realizing that the enemy of the country is the one that played the chess moves to make people look for the future in the past. Believing that we cannot ideate, we cannot bring fresh ideas to handle and give our children and our grandchildren the future that they deserve. So the point now is, if we're able to, first of all, quickly establish non-violence, the southern part of the country can bridge all its gaps quickly. There'll be no need to talk about looking for the future in the past. Now, because Nigeria was divided in 2 steps, we also have to reconstruct this in 2 steps. Now, the same people who set out the problem have also given us a formula to pretend as if we are really united in the country. So to be politically correct, before you can even apply the solution, you have to be very courageous. It will take separate total unification of the North, total proper unification of the South, before we can now come for a practical unification, profitable, of both North and South. Then and only then can we talk about an overarching vision that the whole of Nigeria will believe in. We can always try any other course, but I can assure you that the future will bear me witness that there's a wisdom that is better than weapons of war.
I think, you know, when you talk about communication, a good number of people will agree that that's a critical, major problem, you know, in the whole melee, because just as you mentioned, it will seem like we don't jaw until we war. Question then is, why does it have to be like that? But you know what? Let's take 1 minute to explore a thing or two. Take one message, and then we'll be right back with you to talk about engaging the younger population of Nigeria. Thanks for staying with us, Reverend Thompson. In another 10 years, the 18-year-old is going to be 28. I talked about that earlier. And you say that there are very interested Nigerians are also looking forward. So let's look forward 10 years. The largest population in Nigeria today are young people. And from all that you have said, it will seem like they don't even have a clue what we are dealing with. How do we begin to communicate with them to bring them on board?
Well, first of all, we will never be able to do that until our leadership totally and practically moves away from the leadership of men in terms of numbers and transits and takes an upper step to the leadership of thoughts. Now, whether we like it or not, because the global community has shrunk, that younger generation, we may be complaining about them, that they're doing drugs, they're doing that and all that and all that. But the truth is, this nation never really made any provision for them. And because of the problems that this nation is facing, this nation is yet to make any provision for them. So in a nutshell, we're sitting on a time bomb. Yet, this is not something that is very difficult to sort out. If we realize that a lot of the ideas of people in leadership positions, I didn't say all, I said a lot of, and I mean, right, let's move above politics right now. A lot of people are still thinking in the past. Those youths that you're talking about hold the key to the Nigerian future. Now, I want to take an example from the Southwest, because, you know, in the Southwest, we have this parable that says, you don't look at a matter from only one side, that if you do that, you are like a knife. It's only a knife that has only one side. But a cutlass or a sword has 2 sides. And at least minimum, we look at things from 2 different sides. And that you can imagine a man who wants to cross a road, who looks only on one side of the road and doesn't look at the other side, is not likely to last long. So let us look at things from the side of the younger generation. Number one, a 30-something-year-old man in Nigeria is considered to be a child because there's been very little provision for them. But amongst them, you will realize that they have realized that the future of the globe is on the digital platform. So you see, we have a digital divide in Nigeria. The anachronisms, the anachronistic generation are still looking back and thinking that these are the days of typewriters. But there's a younger generation that has the advantage of the processing speed and the wide latitude of digital computation.
But Reverend,
if we only would listen to the younger generation, we would find out that most of the solutions to the Nigerian problem are actually in the hands of the younger generation. Everything from smart houses, designing houses that run on solar energy, primarily. In a place like Africa, it has taken us this long. All these things are common play in the hands of this younger generation.
Well, Reverend, you know, it's interesting it's interesting that you raise it this way, and I'm just hoping that with all of the conversations that the federal government has advised that state governments should engage, let's hope that they will actually create those platforms that will engage this young generation. We are completely out of time right now. We have. So thank you very much for